and thank you for joining me on this foodoffensive.com's weekly video broadcast. I have been bringing you a series of special reports on sweeteners. I have just simply called the series Sweets, but it's focusing on sweeteners, both natural and unnatural, and I'm beginning with some of the major ones right now. I did a brief little intro for the first part. This is going to be the third part, and then I'm spending a couple of weeks, 3 weeks on aspartame, because that's a huge one that's in all the diet drinks. It's in packaged gum now. It's hard to find traditional regular bubble gum at the cash register at your local store without aspartame in it. I've challenged you in other videos to find that, and it's hard to do that. And so I wanted to hit aspartame right away because there's a lot of controversy around it, and it's quite warranted because of the studies that are out there, the things that people have complained of headaches and things like that after eating it, and it's been pinpointed to aspartame. And so I wanted to look at that. Last week we started the little section here of the Sweets series on with aspartame, and we did just kind of an intro and a background on and history on aspartame, kind of the timeline of when it was created and kind of the series that it went, a series of steps it went through in the brief little approval process. And so this week I wanted to look, as promised, at the health risks involved, and there's a lot of studies concerning aspartame, and a lot of studies showing its carcinogenic effects on the rats that it was tested on. And so I want to look at a couple of those studies and then also look at a few video clips here concerning aspartame also, and it's linked to hypoglycemia and nutrition and behavior in general. So we'll get into that here in a second. But looking right away, I have a report. It's called Lifespan Exposure to Low Doses of Aspartame Beginning During Prenatal Life Increases Cancer Effects in Rats. And this was back in September of 2007 by the Environmental Health Perspective. I have another article by them as well, a more recent one, but this one just kind of gives a little background of their study. The objective was to better quantify the carcinogenic risk of aspartame beginning treatment during fetal life. So this is looking at the effects, of the actual fetus and then how that's related, and it just goes in and it lists the different test results. And then in their conclusion, I just highlighted something here I wanted to point out really quick. It just says, furthermore, the study demonstrates that when lifespan exposure to aspartame begins during fetal life, its carcinogenic effects are increased. Now you can look deeper. With the interest of time here, I'm not going to get into all the numbers, but I'm at least pointing out this article to show you can go look at that further. But basically, this study demonstrates that when the exposure to aspartame begins in fetal life, that the carcinogenic effects are increased. And so think about this: when a mother who already, is talking about humans now, when they're drinking aspartame before they get pregnant, it's just something they do. They drink it they think it helps reduce weight or whatever, keep the weight down. They're drinking that, and then they get pregnant, and then they continue that habit of drinking that Diet Coke or whatever brand they're drinking that has aspartame in it, or other products that have aspartame in it. It could have an effect, an actually doubling effect or an increased effect of the carcinogenic issues going later on in the life of their baby. So this is an article referring to that. Another one concerning that, like I said, from environmental health perspectives also, they do a study. I'm going to go back to the top of the article here. It's very lengthy, so of course I'm not going to get into it because it describes all the controls in their experiment and the different groups that study the numbers, getting into all that. But this one is titled First Experimental Demonstration of the Multipotential Carcinogenic Effects of Aspartame Administered in the Feed of the Sprague-Dawley rats, and that's the name of the type of rats that they use, and that was in the other study as well. But it just goes into kind of some details about the experiment, the numbers of rodents that it's been the number of rodents used in the study over time, and the amount of products that have aspartame in it, some details in history about the timeline type thing that we looked at last week. Talked about the materials and the methods. I mean, this is going in really deep into their study. They're trying to back this up and making sure they show all that they have here. But jumping right along to the bottom here, the results. Some of the things it said that they observed, and I kind of highlighted a few here. It says no differences in water consumption in the rats that they had tested, whereas a dose-related difference in feed consumption was observed. Also, no substantial differences in mean body weight were observed between the ones treated and those untreated. No substantial difference in survival was observed among the groups, and no evident behavioral changes were observed. I want to point that out, kind of give both sides there. It does say that not a significant change in some of those areas. It does point out the fact that a dose-related difference in feed consumption was consumed or was observed. And what I take from that is the fact that you can if you're taking an aspartame, it could cause you to eat more than you normally would, kind of that same effect that MSG has. But it does point out some of the things they found, and I've highlighted them here. Total malignant tumors, lymphomas, leukemias, preneoplastic and neoplastic lesions of the renal pelvis and ureter, malignant schwannomas of peripheral nerves, preneoplastic and neoplastic lesions of the olfactory, malignant brain tumors, and then other malignant tumors. So with as little as it says here 2,000 parts per million, they have shown that there was that type of tumor. So very interesting. They show a history of their controls, some discussion at the end. So very lengthy there, like I said. I'm not going to get into it much, but when you're studying the effects that it has on rats with very close kind of system that we have biologically, it's important to point out those studies. And also I found some information as well. The Independent points it out here from a very recent article. Looks like June. Actually, this is the newer one I have. I have a newer one concerning something else. This one says June of 1999, but basically talking about the fact that this top sweetener in the title, it says world's top sweetener is made with GM bacteria, and of course that top sweetener would be aspartame, and it's causing, it could contain this genetically modified bacteria. And it goes on to talk about how there's two strains of bacteria in there. One's traditionally modified and one is genetically modified. It says Monsanto, and of course Monsanto being the owner of this, of course they are the kings, the giants of genetically engineering. So you can't, that's come to expect it with them. But of course it says here that I've highlighted Monsanto insists that it is completely safe. Well, of course they do. You're not going to tell someone you're killing them when you're killing them with the food that you're making tons and tons of money off of. But it goes into the details of how aspartame is made, and then ending saying that no such studies have been done, or at least they have not been placed in the public domain, and talking about how this is genetic engineer talking about how this compound could be toxic, and so you can look at that yourself. The Independent, I'll have the links up with that as well. But here's another cancerous truth about artificial sweetener aspartame. This is an important one to look at. This is from Natural Society, and this is the newer one somewhat newer one, October 17th, 2011. Patrick Gallagher of Natural Society writes an article and points out that the title, The Deathly Icing on the Cake, Revealing the Cancerous Truth About Aspartame, and talks about Victoria Ennis Brown, who is a researcher and who's done a lot of research into aspartame and looking at the different study results of her and the research results, looking at the fact that 67% of all female rats develop tumors. And of course, the amounts that they have given these rats in these studies, it says both of these amounts are approved by the FDA, which is a 50 milligram per kilogram ratio, which is a reasonable dose. This is the same amount of dose that's approved by the FDA. And talking about a ratio as low as 400 parts per million can be carcinogenic. So even a much lower ratio. And also it ends by saying, and this is important to point out, metabolized in the body, aspartame can yield other more dangerous chemicals such as methanol and formaldehyde. That's right, it can create formaldehyde in your body once it's ingested. And in fact, the methanol thing, if you watch Sweet Misery, I referred to that at that documentary last week in that video about how, covering this documentary does a great job of covering aspartame and those affected by it and the different studies and the fraud involved with the studies and their own research. But one lady's actually serving prison time because supposedly they charged her for with poisoning her husband. They found a large amount of methanol, but then they point out the fact in the video that it could be from the fact that he ingested a lot of an aspartame type product near his death as part of a diet thing he was doing and working out, whatever he was using. You can watch that in the video, but basically it created a large amount of methanol, and now she's being charged with his poisoning, and it could be in fact that product he was using. So that's a major issue. But I wanted to look at the hypoglycemia factor and just nutrition and behavior in general by Dr. Blaylock. Both of these are in his little lecture that he did called Nutrition and Behavior, and you can see that right now. We're going to do a quick clip of that as we end here. But until next time, this has been foodoffensive.com, coming at you from the front lines of our food supply. Thank you for joining me.
Now let's look at the effect of crime in nutrition. This was done by Dr. Stitt, who was a probation officer in Ohio, who did some research on the effect of diet and probation violators. And what she found is that those who remained on a bad diet, a lot of sugar, a lot of junk food, a lot of food additives like MSG, NutraSweet, these things, when they stayed on that, 56% of them ended up violating their probation by committing some antisocial act, robbery, violence, etc. But if they were switched to a healthy diet, only 8% ever broke their probation. So there was a tremendous change in their behavior just by changing their diet. And these are felons. When they looked at narcotic abuse, they found the same thing, is that those who maintained the bad diet, the high sugar diet, junk food diet, 47% of them continued to use narcotics while they were on probation. Whereas those who were switched to the better diet, only 13% of them violated their probation by using narcotics. So it's a rather profound effect. It's not a minor effect. They also coincidentally found there was a dramatic reduction in suicides. So there was a strong correlation between this high sugar, high junk food diet and suicidal behavior. Now, the Alabama prison system also did the similar study. They changed the diet of some of the prisoners and used the others as control. They found that there was a 42% reduction in criminal events when they changed these criminals' diet, and that there was a 61% reduction in antisocial behavior at 1 year. Another example of the profound effect of diet. Now, sugar's not the only thing that can make you hypoglycemic. Aspartame, NutraSweet, and monosodium glutamate are both powerful stimulators of insulin release. They will both make you powerfully hypoglycemic. And this is one of the paradoxical things about this sweetener, aspartame, is if you look at the studies, particularly the ones reported to the FDA, one of the big complaints is it causes weight gain. Everybody's drinking it because they think it makes them lose weight. Actually, it makes you gain weight in a lot of people, and that's because it makes you hypoglycemic, and so you tend to eat and snack and nibble, and you gain weight.